Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Looking at the Player's Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons 2025. Got to page 186. Those of you who have read it will realize why I'm pausing so much at this point in time. I don't like controversy. I don't like bringing up things that make some people mad. I don't like, in this particular day and age, to poke things that people have proven to be less than usually pokeable about. This time, I'm trying to deal with how to approach something. Doing the entire book all at once, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to make a 7-hour video, and I haven't gone through that much of it yet. But I've gotten to this part of it, which is important, and like the indexing in the monster manual, abysmal as it was a subject that I felt needed to be addressed on its own. This one too. This one from the PHP. But it means wandering into one of these controversial areas. And that usually gives me screaming yips in the back of my head because I really don't like confrontation. But here's what we're going to do about this. This is my YouTube channel, last time that I checked. So I'm going to present this from a particular point of view, and it's going to be mine. And there we go. And your point of view may differ entirely from mine, which is perfectly okay. One of the joys of the world and of this form of communication relationship is that you are perfectly welcome to have a different point of view. You are perfectly welcome to mention your point of view and to compare it to mine, even in the comments section if you choose. But I'm not, at this point in time, inviting anybody to attempt to alter my point of view, because I'm not going to alter my point of view. My point of view will alter itself over time if I feel it's required. At the moment, I don't. Thank you very much. Proceeding with my point of view. There's a term that is not used the same way in this book. In fact, it's a different term. They've changed a word. They've changed a word that some people might think is important, and I just don't. We're talking about taxonomy today. Now, taxonomy is a term for the scientific classification of organisms, from the broadest possible category of organisms to the smallest possible category of organisms. You might be familiar with the mnemonic, King Phillip came over for good spaghetti. I like spaghetti. I'm hoping to have some this week. You would remember this mnemonic from a biology class because it helps us remember kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. There was another one in there at one point in time. In fact, during a great deal of my upbringing, there was another one in there, and that being race. However, biologically speaking, the taxonomy of living beings stops at species. That is where you have the key points of differentiation between one type of thing and another. Right? The tips of the branches of the evolutionary tree would be the species, and not, as we have seen in previous editions of Dungeons & Dragons, the race. So saying the dwarven race was always a little incorrect, because you can't look at dwarves and elves, particularly as a dwarf or an elf, and say, well, we have a single common ancestor, so we have the same species, but no, they're obviously enough from differing in ancestors If their skulls are different, their species are different. Well, for a given value of difference. So, species descriptions, as opposed to race descriptions. Don't have a problem with that, actually, because again, it's taxonomy. We're seeing that the term race is a social construct more than a biological construct these days, which attempts to divide one particular species, that being Homo sapiens, into classifications which are essentially based on geography, where a person's branch of the species may have grown and adapted. More or less melanin in the skin, different structures around the eyes depending on how much direct sunlight or indirect sunlight those eyes had to deal with. Any one of a number of thousands of different environmental pressures causing changes over time to general physiology, but not enough changes to differentiate ourselves. Every sapient bipedal humanoid on Earth is a Homo sapiens. And that's the species. Now, regardless of where you come from, no matter what that path of environments was that led you to the melting pot of today, but Homo sapiens, all one species. And again, I'm on page 186 of this book. So, use of the term species. Okay, good with it. I'm fine with that. It's more correct, which is technically the best kind of correct. The species available: Aasimar, Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Goliath, Halfling, Human, Orc, and Tiefling. Some of you might have hackles coming up. There are races. Here's my upbringing, making this difficult on me already. I'm going to try and catch myself as often as I do it. If I don't, feel free to leave me the times, places, the time signatures of where I flub it and don't use the term species where I mean species, but instead use the word race where I mean species. And I will look at those times and die a little bit more inside every time I see one. Listen to species. I would not have included all of these species, but I understand why most of them are there. Aasimar, Tieflings blew up big in 5th edition. Having Aasimar around in this edition makes perfect sense. Dragonborn blew up in 4th edition. You got to have your dwarves and elves, your gnomes, your halflings. I don't like Goliaths. Goliaths are cheaty giant people who don't want to, who want all the benefit to being a giant, but want to tell you, but I'm not a giant, I'm a Goliath, so I don't have that problem. Whenever you talk about the problems the giants might have. No, I can walk into buildings and have interactions with normal sized people. I don't have any problem slamming my head into doorways or need a monstrous amount of additional resources to keep me alive. I've got the strength and the stature, except I'm not that tall. You're a giant in abilities only, but without any of the penalties that go along with being a giant. I don't like it. It just seems a little bit too Mary Sue cheaty to me. People have played Goliaths in my games, and I've allowed that, and it's okay. They're okay, but come on. Seriously. Orcs. I like orcs being on the list. I've played orcs in the past. Scorch the Orc, the bartender NPC in many of my D&D games. Kung Fu Master. Long story as to why that came about. So here's a list of species. It's okay. It's fine. There's a certain amount of balance to it. And Aasimar and Tiefling and all that. in previous editions, the race that you chose when you got your species had major physical effects on the character at the character's very basis, that being their statistics. That dwarves tended to be stronger and tougher, whereas elves tended to be more agile and more intellectual. Bonus to strength, bonus to calm, bonus to dex, bonus to intelligence. Okay, those have been removed as a matter of species. Species do not gain racial bonuses. I'm having a hard time with that. And that's probably just how my mind has always framed the structure of the D&D character. That the species was as important as the career profession, the class, as anything else. And that was a normal reflection of how the species of a person and what their upbringing within that species might have done with and for them altered their or affected their physiology. Looking at it from a scientific point of view or science fiction, if I want to get my sciencey goggles on in the background of my fantasy game, as I often am wont to do, whether it's a good thing or not, that makes sense. There are abilities that each and every one of these species gets based, your Aasimar has celestial resistance and healing hands and dark vision. You're going to have entire tables full of people with dark vision. Sorry, it happens. And the Dragonborn's got their fire breath, and your gnomes have they're making stuff, and so there is a differentiation between species there, and their physical description. Goliaths walk a little bit faster because they're bigger and have longer legs because they're fucking giants without having any giant penalties. But it's not the amount, and I can see what's being done here. I can see what's being done just by the fact that that they changed something fairly major about how taxonomy is handled, but it's on page 186 with no descriptive text or additional text or a note from the editor on why they're doing it this way, when it is so very different from how they've handled it up to the very recent past. Well, between the editor of this book and I, one of us has to, have the guts to point it out and talk about it. So, my YouTube channel, go figure. You get stat bumps from your class. I don't hate that. The things that these characters, regardless of their species, focus on as their profession builds their bodies and their minds in directions to help them with that set of tasks. That makes a lot of sense to me. That's fine. The back of my brain is screaming "Por qué no las dos?" Because I like stat bumps. I think high stats are wonderful, and that people who want to have that option, okay, it'd be nice. It'd be nice walking away from that. It's not the way it is. It seems like a little thing. It seems like a little thing when you contextualize everything going on in the entire universe and galaxies spinning off and collapsing into Kalaxars over time, and eventually even those running out of enough Hawking radiation to support the surface and breaking down into, yeah, whew, I'm not talking about the thing. It's a bad habit of mine. Ultimately, we are asking how our imaginary characters are going to be defined and what rules we need to know in order to play that particular type of imaginary character. A correction has been made, purely based on science of taxonomy. That's the correct term. I have the old term in my head, as I've shown during this very video. I will probably slip and use the older term any number of times, probably for the rest of my life. My brain's kind of broken. But I know what the correct term is, know why it's being used, and agree that it should be used like that. It shouldn't be all that controversial. But that's what I'm going. That's all the attention I tend to give this particular matter. I'm going to steamroll through some of the other material in the book in future editions. It's just an effort being made to correct old errors and to look at things through newer eyes. There may be overcorrections, as I believe they've overcorrected a bit here, but you're not going to get all the way to the most ideal edition you're going to have all at once. I think that's why they're not looking at this as an edition of its own, as it were. This is a very expensive, ridiculously heavy living document. It is obviously subject to some amount of change as time goes on. And if they find they've overcorrected, I imagine we'll see some new charts down the line 60 or 70 bucks later. At least they didn't make a microtransaction out of it yet. I'm going to get snarky in some of this stuff. I don't like a lot of stuff that Wizards is doing. I'm not that fond of the business model being displayed here. But I do like the game. And I still intend to run it, and I still intend to play it, and I still intend to write for it, even as a third-party producer. So, okay. Got that Band-Aid ripped off. 97 more to go, but that's what I got for this one. Well, thank you very much for watching and following along in this particular... you don't even know what to call this one. This is Scott worrying himself to death and then ranting. Yeah. Thank you very much for following along. I'm Scott DeCorum. This is what has mattered to me. I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum. And now over to Uncle Drac for the outro. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy this video, give it a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If there's any other topics you would like to hear Scott talk about, questions you'd like him to answer, subjects you'd like him to cover, please leave a comment down below. He will love getting your comment, and you will love leaving him one. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, why not? This channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you do, you might also want to hit the little notification bell so you're alerted when these videos become available. If you would like to support this channel in a more substantial manner, we invite you to hit us up at the Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum. And consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows us to create better content more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.